Oh, hello, time travelers, and welcome, new time travelers. As always, if you're new to this channel and enjoy learning history from around the world, one historical event at a time, then don't forget to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Without further ado, let's get into it. Today we're going to start out in 432 BCE when the Parthenon was constructed in Athens. That almost makes me think of the Percy Jackson series, or even the books, or the movie that they made a while back, where Percy, Grover, and Annabeth went to Annabeth's mom's shrine, if you will, to escape from the mother of all monsters. Anyway, in 1662, Julius Cardinal Mazarin, a disciple of Vitrul and architect of France's ascent to European supremacy, passed away in Venice, France. Where we are now going to make a stop in 1734, when Francisco Beu, who was considered by his contemporaries to be the finest Spanish painter of the period, was greatly influenced by Anton Raphael, Mangels, and Giovanni Battista Tiepolo, was born. 31 years later, in 1765, a vigorous press companion by French philosopher Voltaire, a court acquired the Hainaut merchant Jean Calas, who had been executed for allegedly murdering his son. The case greatly strengthened the movement for criminal law reform and religious tolerance in France. 1796 is when Napoleon Bonaparte, future Emperor of France, married Josephine. He had the marriage annulled in 1810, so they were only married for like 14 years. The next stop is in 1831, when the French Foreign Legion, whose unofficial motto was Lego Patria Nostra, or the Legends of Our Fatherland, was founded by King Louis Philippe and his aid as an aid in controlling French colonial possession in Africa. On this day in 1862, during the American Civil War, ironclads Monitor and Virginia, formerly Merrimack, battled in the harbor at Hampton Roads, Virginia, marking the beginning of a new era of naval warfare. 1916 is when Pancho Villa's men killed more than a dozen in a raid in Columbus, New Mexico. In 1930, American jazz saxophonist, composer, and band leader Ornette Coleman was born in Fort Worth, Texas. 4 years later, in 1934, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, the first man to travel to space in 1961, was born. American chess master Bobby Fischer was born in Chicago in 1943. In 1945, the U.S. Army Air Force bombed Tokyo with napalm, causing fires that destroyed a quarter of the city and killed some 80,000 civilians. On this day in 1956, British authorities exiled to the Seychelles Island in the Indian Ocean Archbishop Marcus, Greek political and spiritual leader Cyprus, and head of the anti-British movement. 3 years later, in 1959, Barbie, a toy doll that became an international sensation, despite criticism, was introduced by Mattel Inc. 1959 also brought us US and Canada by an exchange note in Ottawa establishing a tariff of tolls for the St. Lawrence Seaway. On this day in 1962, U.S. State Department confirmed that U.S. pilots are flying combat training missions with South Vietnamese airmen over guerrilla-held areas of South Vietnam. Now, from my understanding of the military terminology, when they say that an area is guerrilla held, they don't actually mean the animal gorilla. It's essentially a warfare term. In 1964, French actress Juliette Binoche, who was noted for the intelligence she brought to her complex and varied roles, was born. Just 2 years later, in 1966, France formally announced that it would withdraw its armed forces from NATO military compound, and that the NATO command installations on French territory would be required to come under French authority to leave. The following year, in 1967, President Johnson asked Congress to restore 7% investment tax credit for business expenditures suspended in November of 1966 to combat inflation. In 1970, Latin Premier Prince Savannah Foma agreed to discuss a Pathet Lao 5-point peace plan. In 1996, American comedian and actor George Burns, whose career in show business spanned 93 years, the highlights of which included a popular comedy act with his wife, Gracie Allen, passed away at the age of 100. So, from the sounds of that, he actually was doing that since he was 7. Wow. 4 years after the turn of the century, in 2004, 5 British citizens who had been held for 2 years at the U.S. Guantanamo Bay military base in Cuba arrived back in Great Britain. By the following day, all had been released without charge. In 2006, British politician John Profumo, who while serving as Secretary of State for War, caused a major scandal in 1963 when it was revealed that he had an affair with Christine Keeler, a dancer who was involved with the Soviet military Akash in London, passed away at the age of 91. And with that, we return to 2024 and our current history. Let's see what this year has in store for us. Until next time.